President of the Senate, ministers, Ambassador Landowski, Jakob, thank you so much for your kind words. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, it is a great honor to be here in Prague, to be in the Senate, to be in this beautiful city and in this beautiful building of the Senate. This is an expression of the historic importance of this country and of this city. And as you all know, this year the Czech Republic is celebrating the 25th anniversary of joining NATO. And that's a big and important anniversary, not least because that was the beginning of a big transformation of Europe, the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new era where NATO and the European Union enlarged and where the Czech Republic and many other countries in the former Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union joined NATO. I was at that time, 25 years ago, a very young politician, but I remember very well the discussions. And many across the alliance were afraid of enlarging. They were afraid that NATO enlargement with countries like the Czech Republic, like Poland, like Hungary, and then all the rest following that was a bit too much for the alliance, and that it would provoke Russia, the Soviet Union. Then I'm very glad that we ended on the conclusion that that was the right decision to make, and that we actually invited and decided that NATO should have an open door. And the NATO enlargement has been one of the really big successes of NATO and has helped to transform Europe. And the Czech Republic, the 25th anniversary, is a great example of that. So therefore, it's an honor to be here today. Then this year we also celebrate the 75th anniversary of NATO. 75 years ago, NATO was founded in Washington, and we will meet later on this year in July. We'll meet in Washington to celebrate, to mark our 75th anniversary, and that will be a great meeting where we'll be in the same room as we founded the alliance 75 years ago. But it is a responsibility for all of us to ensure that it's not only celebrations, but also that we are demonstrating that the success of NATO is because we have been able to be united, but also because we have been able to adapt and change when the world is changing. So therefore we cannot only celebrate, we also need to do some hard work at the summit, but not least in the preparations leading up to the summit, so we can once again show the world that NATO is responding when the challenges are increasing and we now face an even more dangerous world. Part of those preparations will be the meeting here in Prague, the foreign ministerial meeting that starts with a dinner tonight and then in a formal discussion tomorrow. That will be a critical part of the preparations, and hopefully after the meeting tomorrow we will be closer to conclusions, closer to the consensus we need to once again adapt this alliance. And there are in particular three areas that will be important tomorrow, but also at the summit in July. And success on these areas will then define whether we're able to deliver what NATO must deliver together when we all meet at the heads of state and government level at the summit in Washington. And those three issues are deterrence and defense. It's Ukraine, and then it's how to strengthen further our partnership with our partners in the Asia Pacific. And I will just briefly go through the three of them, and then rest assured we work hard on all of those as we move towards decisions later on this summer. First, on deterrence and defense. For many years after the end of the Cold War, NATO actually built down our collective defense. We reduced the number of troops, we reduced the readiness, and we changed the character of those troops from collective defense, heavy armor in Europe, to more expeditionary forces conducting operations in Afghanistan, in the Balkans and elsewhere. Since 2014, there has been a huge change, because since the illegal annexation of Crimea and since Russia first went into Eastern Donbass, we have implemented the biggest reinforcement of collective defense in a generation. With higher readiness of our troops, for the first time battle groups, combat-ready troops in the eastern part of the alliance, first in the Baltic countries and Poland, then after the full-scale invasion in February 2022, we doubled the number of battle groups, and we also made a decision to be able to scale them up from battalion size to brigade size battle groups. And we have increased readiness, and we have also agreed new defense bands with much higher ambitions for forces, for readiness, for capabilities. So this is a big transformation of the alliance which has already taken place, and that has to continue as we face a more aggressive Russia and a global great power competition and many other threats. To do so, allies have to invest more. And I attended the NATO summit in Wales, in Cardiff, in 2014, where we made a decision that all allies should spend 2% of GDP on defense. At that time, only 3 allies, Greece, United Kingdom and United States, spent 2% of GDP on defense. All other allies spent less, and many of them much less. Also, the Czech Republic, the Baltic countries, were far away from 2%. Since then, allies have really started to increase. And the latest report we have was published in February. In that report, 18 out of 32 allies are spending 2% of GDP on defense. But I expect that number to increase by the summit in July. We will, in not so many weeks, we will publish new updated numbers. And since February, Sweden has joined the alliance. Sweden is already spending 2%, so then we are 19. Then Norway has announced finally that they will spend 2% of GDP on defense. And also some other allies are very close. So I really hope that by the summit in July we will have even better numbers to present. And that is the best way to demonstrate that actually we are delivering on our pledges to invest more to strengthen our collective defense, because that has a cost. And we also agreed that 2% is a minimum. For many allies, there is a need to spend more than 2% to meet the capability targets we have agreed as an alliance. Then it's good news that the Czech Republic has now decided that they will spend 2% of GDP. I just met with the Prime Minister, and they are very much aware of that this is a challenge. But he promised again that in 2024, this year, the Czech Republic will spend at least 2% of GDP on defense, and my understanding is that there's broad political support, so it's a kind of robust agreement across the party lines for spending at least 2% of GDP on defense. So that's the first task, is to demonstrate progress on collective defense, on readiness, on forces, on capabilities, including air defense and defense spending when we meet in Washington in July, and one of the issues we'll discuss tomorrow at the foreign ministerial meeting. Then the second main topic and the most urgent topic is of course Ukraine. And the NATO allies have provided unprecedented support to Ukraine since the full-scale invasion in February 2022. And I think that President Putin totally underestimated the Ukrainians, their bravery, their commitment to fight. He thought he was going to take control over Ukraine within weeks. He totally failed because he underestimated the strength of the Ukrainian armed forces, their bravery, their skill, their commitment to defend their land. But he also underestimated NATO allies and our commitment to support Ukraine. And NATO allies have provided a lot of military support. Actually, 99% of the military support to Ukraine comes from NATO allies. It's ammunition, artillery, air defense, battle tanks, and many other types of military support. And the countries represented here today are among those who have really delivered a lot, including Poland, Finland, and also the Czech Republic. So we are grateful for them and all the other allies for what they have done. And today I was also updated by the Czech-led ammunition initiative, which is also making a big difference. with Czech coordination, you have been able to buy from the international market ammunition, which is soon will be delivered to Ukraine, and that will make a difference on the battlefield every day. So thank you for Czechia, the Czech Republic, for being such a staunch and important ally in providing support to Ukraine. We can all be proud of this. But the reality is that what we have done is not enough. And the reality is also that over the last months, we have seen serious delays in the provision of ammunition, military support, and serious gaps, for instance, when it comes to air defense and ammunition. And that's the reason why we are now working on in NATO how NATO can have a bigger role in coordinating the provision of security assistance, the delivery of security assistance and training, to ensure that we have a stronger framework to minimize the risks for new gaps and delays in the supplies of weapons and ammunition and training for the Ukrainians. And also why I have proposed a multi-year financial pledge, where we actually agree for several years that we're going to give a minimum of financial support to buy military stuff to Ukraine, to finance our military support, or in-kind delivery, to ensure that we have more transparency, more accountability, and more predictability for the Ukrainians in planning and knowing what they can expect to receive from NATO allies. And such a multi-year commitment will help the Ukrainians to defend their country, but also send a very important message to Moscow that we are there for the long haul, and that's important to convince them that they cannot wait us out. We are there to stay, and therefore I welcome the fact that we are now discussing, addressing, working on how to agree a greater NATO role in the coordination of the support and a multi-year financial commitment to ensure more robust and predictable support to Ukraine. Final decisions will be made at the summit. In the meantime, we need to just continue to provide as much support as possible, because this is critical for the Ukrainians, but also critical for our own security. You may have seen there have been discussions about the type of support, but also the use of the support we provide. I think we need to recognize that allies are delivering many different types of military support to Ukraine, and some of them have imposed some restrictions on the use of these weapons. Others have no restrictions on the weapons they have delivered to Ukraine. These are national decisions, but I think that in light of how this war has evolved, in the beginning almost all the fighting took place on Ukrainian territory, deep into Ukrainian territory, but now the last weeks and months most of the heavy fighting has taken place actually along the border between Russia and Ukraine in the Kharkiv region. And then we see that the Russians can be on the Russian side of the border, which is then more or less the same as the front line. They can be there with their artillery, with their missile launchers, with their airplanes and their depots for ammunition and fuel, and be at least more safe than they would have been if they could have been attacked also with the most advanced weapons that Ukraine has received. And therefore I believe that the time has come to consider some of these restrictions to enable the Ukrainians to really defend themselves. We need to remember what this is. This is a war of aggression launched by choice by Moscow against Ukraine. Russia invaded another country, invaded Ukraine, and Ukraine has, according to international law, the right to defend themselves. It's enshrined in the UN Charter. And the right for self-defense includes also striking military targets, legitimate military targets outside Ukraine, military targets, for instance, on the border, Russian territory, launching attacks against Ukrainian forces. This is now an issue which is addressed by allies, and I think it reflects that the character of the war has changed over the last weeks and a couple of months. The last issue on the meeting tomorrow and at the summit is the fact that we need to strengthen our global partnerships, in particular with our Asia-Pacific partners. This reflects the fact that security is not regional, security is global, and this is very clearly demonstrated by the war in Ukraine. If we look at who are Russia's best friends in this war, it's Iran that is delivering drones and helping Russia with building a factory to produce even more Iranian drones. It's North Korea which is delivering big amounts, more than 1 million rounds of ammunition to Russia. And then it's China propping up the Russian war economy, delivering a lot of dual-use equipment, advanced electronics, microprocessors. 90% of the microelectronics delivered or imported by Russia last year came from China. So Russia would not have been able to conduct the war they do against Ukraine without without China propping up their economy. In return, Russia is mortgaging its future to Beijing and sharing the technology with North Korea and Iran to help them with their missile and nuclear programs. So this demonstrates that what happens in Europe matters for Asia, what happens in Asia matters for Europe, and therefore NATO will remain a regional alliance, North America and Europe, but we need to work with our global partners, not least the Indo-Pacific partners, and therefore I welcome that the heads of state and government from Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea will attend our meeting in July. These are the three main challenges, the three main issues. We will work on them all the way to the summit. I'm confident that we'll make important decisions on all these three challenges, because NATO is the most successful alliance in history, because we have been able to, despite our differences, despite the fact that we now are 32 allies from both sides of the Atlantic, that we again and again have proven our ability to find consensus, to make decisions, which reflects that we are adapting when the world is changing. Now we face a more dangerous world. We need NATO more than ever, but we need an agile and adaptable NATO, and that's what we are demonstrating. So once again, thanks so much for hosting me and my delegation here in Prague. I look forward to the Foreign Ministerial meeting starting later on today. And thanks so much and good luck with the conference. Thank you.